Hello and welcome to TVP World, straight from Ukraine Recovery Conference in Gdańsk. My name is Jakub Kapiszewski, and I'd like to ask you one question. How hard is it to conduct a business in Ukraine? And not just any business, insurance, in a country waging an actual war. And on that topic, I would like to welcome in the studio Maciej Szyszko, CEO of PZU Ukraine. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
So that was pretty much my first question. What's the basic difference between doing insurance in an ordinary country, if I may say so, and Ukraine, a country when missiles and drones are a constant threat, damages to infrastructure happen every day? What's the basic difference?
Basis is the same every time. So it's really about transferring a risk and from the customer to the insurance company. So that's the ordinary way of doing insurance business. But particularly in Ukraine, we have war, active war, and basically we can provide, and the insurance market can provide the cover for the war risk to the customers. Home insurance for individual customers.
So war risk, just explain to me, it's a different risk than weather risk?
Yeah, usually war risk is excluded. So in the traditional policy insuring property, whatever is the property, home or industrial risk, war risk is excluded. But we can also include that risk and cover the risk of war. And that's very popular currently in Ukraine, of course. And for this reason, we can somehow build the basis. So for insurance, it's important to have many objects to be insured to somehow distribute this risk. So we can't sit on the single, property insure single object and wait, okay, something is happening or not. We can operate only in the situation where our database is full of the objects, and that's possible at the moment to insure also war risk cover for industrial and individual customers.
And how an insurance company actually manages this war-related risk? Because it's pretty much definition of it is being unmanageable. You never know where a missile is going to fall, where a drone is going to strike, right?
Yes, but you know what? That's in reality, we started in 2022 at the beginning of the active full-scale invasion. And at the very beginning, we started with the individual cover for MOD Casco, insurance for car. But then, half a year later, insurance industry in Ukraine decided to include also home insurance to build the statistics. So
okay.
The data is important in our business.
Because insurance is pretty much a data-driven business.
It is
right?
about data. And then step by step, more and more capacity, how it is called, so maximum sum under cover was increased. And finally, we are able as an industry, also PZU in Ukraine, to insure also industrial risks like 50, 100 million euro. And that part is really reinsured in the Western countries. Okay. So also entire industry, insurance industry, is somehow distributing this risk.
Okay, so you guys also have your own insurance, so to speak.
Yes, so we are sharing the risk. We can't, get, exposure for many million euro, and that part is covered by another insurer. They are distributing that risk to have these statistics, to have this not single, exposure we can't manage, and that's the way how it works.
So basically what you're trying to say is that since the full-scale invasion, the whole industry had to adapt and create new mechanisms and products around them.
Build databases, build statistics, just to be really able to give the price at the end. So that's really about, insurance is really about giving the price for unknown, right?
Exactly.
So that's unknown. You can't predict. Even we will be driving back to Warsaw, right? And we can't predict. Will it be successful, or there will be an accident on the way? But on the insurance industry, we have statistics. So we can predict statistically how frequent is the risk of accident, for instance, how frequent is the risk of war in Ukraine, accident, and this is the way how it works.
Okay, so I understand that by now you pretty much know the probability of something happening, for example, to some industrial estate, like
It is still volatile, but the database are better and better. So we started, okay, the first, attacks were like 50 drones and 2 missiles, right?
Yes.
Now we've been observing hundreds of drones and Shaheds, and also like 50 missiles. So the statistic is changing, but now we can somehow predict the development of the risk.
Okay, how much more expensive is it to get insurance coverage for a industrial facility in Ukraine versus in Western Europe? Can you give us some numbers?
Of course. So the basic.
Let's say in France it costs €1 million to insure a production facility, and in Ukraine it would be twice as much, thrice?
If the war risk is included, it's like 2-3 times more expensive.
3 times more expensive, okay.
So it's rather.
So it's a pretty significant outlay
This
for a
is
business.
significant, but anyway, it is exposure is different. So we have active war. So
Okay.
we know that every 5-7 days there will be missiles attack in Kiev. That's known already. So the price reflects really the exposure. So actually it's more expensive, but there is a risk behind that.
So thanks to all those adaptation mechanisms, thanks to all those databases that you've built that allow you to calculate the probability of something bad happening, thanks to all those reinsurance mechanisms you've mentioned, the industry can actually turn a profit
Yes.
in Ukraine. And you are even expanding, because PZU Ukraine recently acquired MetLife, which is one of the companies specializing in individual coverages, right?
In live business. In live business. We announced the transaction. So currently, that's important to also explain. We are waiting for the regulatory approvals. So that's we just announced at the beginning of May the transaction, and now we wait for the approvals. And MetLife is life insurer with significant market share. So actually we are acquiring market leader for life insurance in Ukraine. And basically reason is relatively easy. We know the market. So PZU has been operating in Ukrainian insurance markets since 2005. So more than 20 years. Also in life. So we know the market, we know the regulations, and we do observe also implementation of European regulations. Actually, NBU is pushing that, very fast, and we like it because it makes, the market more predictable.
Of course.
More similar to Polish market, to Baltic states where we are operating. But altogether, this decision for acquisition was just, okay, there is only one leader on the market. And so we decided to look at this opportunity, and finally we were successful. And now we wait for the regulatory approvals for.
Okay. Given all that adaptation that the industry has undergone in the past 4 or 5 years, are there still objects in Ukraine that you guys would not insure?
Of course.
Because it's just too risky.
Of course. They are, and they are also in Poland, they are in the UK, so they are objects. So usually they are,
I don't know, objects, facilities, people.
Yes, they are. But this is particularly related to the so-called risk appetite.
I know that you offer some products with cooperation with Credit Export Agency from Poland, which is KUKE.
Yes.
And these are insurances targeted at the transport sector.
That's
you guys...
cargo insurance for Polish customers. So we decided to implement also war cover. specifically for this cargo insurance. So we do observe the customers, searching for this kind of insurance for Ukraine. And for that industry, it was April, I suppose, when we implemented this cover for Polish customers. So that's already in place, working, and that's cooperation with KUKE. And
KUKE, which is the Polish credit export
agency. And maybe one more thing about KUKE. So KUKE is also involved in our acquisition of MetLife.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing. So we decided to buy the cover for geopolitical risk. So even being insurer, we decided to have, the policy.
You guys know the best.
So for unpredicted exposure for the political risk.
This is, we are speaking at the Ukraine Recovery Conference. So everyone is saying that once the guns go silent, it's going to be a boon for construction industry, for the energy industry, for many industries in Ukraine. Is it going to be a boon for insurance industry also, or the very fact that Russia is Ukraine's neighbor is going to cast a shadow on the country, and insurance is still going to be a risky business in Ukraine?
Insurance, it's risky business anyway. It's about transferring the risk. So I don't look at that from this perspective. So it's definitely, we think that recovery of Ukraine will bring huge investments, and we will be involved, being there for 20 plus years. But there is one thing I want really to share with the potential investors that considering maybe presence in Ukraine. So I think it's now it's time to start. And the reason is very easy, simple. So when the war is over, there will be a line of investors. And customers will ask all those investors, opening business, whatever is the activity, what did you do during the war? So for the potential investors, this is time to start activity in Ukraine now, before the end of the war, even with the small presence. But building the presence during the war will show that you are really focused on the market and you want to be there. And it's not just because of the recovery and of the war that you are there. And it's important to be, if you want to be involved on the recovery projects.
Set up shop in Ukraine and grab some insurance.
Sure. PZU is the best every time. So.
Maciej Szyszko, CEO of PZU Ukraine, was my guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we were talking from the Ukraine Recovery Conference. Stay tuned for TVP World's coverage of this conference. My name is Jakub Kapiszewski. Goodbye.